what you can find in the basement of Utah State University's library. Not that. In here. During business hours, you can come in here, look at rare materials, old books, really cool things. It's locked. All right, Special Collections and Archives was closed, unfortunately. We did show up after hours, but I'm here to talk to you about one of the books that you can find in there. This book is called Paradisi and Soleil, and it was written by somebody named John Parkinson. The name Paradisi and Soleil is actually really cool because it's a play on words for John Parkinson's last name. Paradisi was another word for park in Soleil, which is another word for sun. So the book is really called Parkinson. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find that pretty cool. Book bindings, really cool thing. So this book was printed on paper, and the buyer had the pieces of paper in hand, unbound. If they wanted it bound, they had to go to somebody specifically to get this bound. There was an option to leave it on the shelf, not bound, but that's not classy enough for early modern England. So you gotta go get that bound and taken care of. Speaking of the bindings, this book was bound in calfskin. So the way the bindings would work is they would wrap the cover of it in the calfskin. The binding of it, you can see on the side of the spine where the twine is kind of holding the pages together to the binding itself. That's what's creating those bumps on the spine. It's a pretty cool book. It's stamped in gold plating, really beautiful design. It's a little bit faded now, but it's still really pretty. Looking at the inside, this very first title page is a rendition of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It's cool to think about how religion played a part in society. We're able to see that in the herbal itself. This book was split into 4 different sections. It talks about the flowers of the garden, kitchen herbs, fruit trees, and how to maintain and keep a beautiful garden, which I'm a huge plant guy. I found this section really interesting. It does talk about tools to use and how to keep a beautiful garden, propagating, a really cool section. You can also see a bit of their culture entwined in there, just by knowing how they made their tools and how they used them. So physicians would use this herbal to treat different illnesses and symptoms that people would come to them with. They would use different parts of the plant, whether that's the stem, the leaves, the flowers. They all had different chemical properties that would be used to treat the human body. We're going to look at purging. To do that, we're going to look at the back of the book, and you'll find a table of virtues. And the virtues is the symptoms that people would come to be treated for. Purging, the first example is a barren wart. And looking at the virtue section, this plant is known to cause barrenness in women. It's crazy to think that they know that much about the human body, that they also know what plants will affect it and how. Each of these plants in the book has some information about the time and place that the plant blooms, where it can be found, and just a general history about the plant. So it's also really cool. The way some of the pictures work in the book, some of them were just by John Parkinson didn't see all these plants. Sometimes the pictures of them were just based off people who had seen them. It was just a description. So they're not always the most accurate, but it's pretty cool to look at still. We're going to look at another one called the root of Elbor. This plant in the virtue section actually has a warning. It's super potent, and if it steeps in the root for too long, the person can get drunk, which is what happened in this story of a guard. Not so good for the occupation, considering he's supposed to guard a city, and due to being intoxicated, he left the city unarmed. Probably not the best thing to do on the job. Physicians could also look up plants by name, and I want to look at the mandrake with you. So it's not as cool as Harry Potter. You can't pull this one out of the soil and hear it scream, unfortunately. But it's still a really cool plant. Looking at the virtue section of this plant, it talks about the leaves and how when they were dried, they could be used for ointment. This could be used to treat skin irritations, rashes, burns, anything like that. Pretty cool. The apples of the mandrake, also really cool. They were soporiferous, meaning that they have lethargic qualities. So no, the screams won't put you to sleep, but those apples sure will. Just like we saw earlier in the Garden of Eden, in that picture, we see religion and references to the Bible here as well. And talks about how Rachel used it to cool and cleanse the body. And it was also referenced in Genesis under a different name, Massa, but it meant Adam's apple. There's a gorgeous picture here that you can look at. A really cool looking plant. All right, if you haven't had it, real quick before I close, I want to talk about pictures. The way that pictures were put into this herbal and printed is they would have a woodcut carving, and it would be etched the design of the plant. It would be dipped and inked and stamped onto the page. Really different than how we print today. But that's all I have for you for Paradisi and Soleil. If you haven't had a chance to check out USC's special collection and archives, I strongly urge you to do so. There's really cool books like this that you can check out, along with some other really rare materials. Stop by. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.